إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل الله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على عبدك ونبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد وقال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر إلى آخر الآية صدق الله العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين يا رب العالمين. Brothers and sisters in Islam, so today inshallah we will try to conclude this important topic which we started last week regarding mental health issue and what does Islam say about this important topic. And I mentioned last week we did a survey that who had heard of mental health within their family, their close relation, who had heard of the illness of cancer, and majority of people put their hands up. And this really shows us that the bimari, the illness, is quite widespread. There was a recent poll which I was looking at a few weeks ago. They say that 3 in 4 people are affected directly or indirectly from mental health issues. And then last week I tried to cover the problems, and today inshallah we will try to cover the solutions and what are the cures for these issues that we have amongst our community bi'idhnillahi wa ta'ala. And inshallah it shouldn't take more than about 40 minutes maximum. It is quite a big topic. I mean, people do many courses on these topics. They have 2 or 3 days courses, and yet they still haven't covered even 5%, 10% of the subject. So before we delve into the topic, the solutions, one thing I mentioned last week about the 2 prophets of Islam, Yaqub alayhi salam and also Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. What I forgot to mention was this ayah which I recited, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. This is really a response to the Yahud, to the Jews who accused Dawood, the son of Sulaiman, of being a magician. And not just that, they accuse him of playing with the jinns and using the jinns and the birds for his own benefits. And this was something which was categorically denied by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through his Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this ayah is the one which we recite, or the Raqis they recite on the one who is possessed with any form of jinn possession, ayn, sihr, etc. It's a really powerful ayah, because in this ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, reminds us of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his power. And it's only through his power that we are able to gain his shifa, and that is the cure from our illness. This I'm going to cover inshallah in my concluding remarks. But before we go into this, there's also a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam which mentions something about trying to cure yourself, self-cure as they call it in the modern terms. But also the lesson which we have from this, what I mentioned last week, is a lot of it has to start from ourselves as the individual person. And there's glad tidings for this person, either it's a female or male, that there will be 70,000 men or women who will be entered into Jannah without any accountability. And guess what? Guess who those are? Those are the ones who never went to Iraqi for some shifa, for some recitation of the Holy Quran. Rather, they kept their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they tried to heal themselves with the ayatul Quran, the way which is prescribed by the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. There are many ayahs of sihr and ayah in the Quran relating to the story of Musa alayhi salam with the magicians. There's also the ayah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, which is one of the most profound ayahs, where he categorically denies the association. He keeps away from associating anyone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah, وَالَّذِي يُمِيتِنِي ثُمَّ يُحْيِي وَالَّذِي أَتْمَعُ أَن يَغْفِرَ. He is the one who gives me life and death. He is the one that gives me shifa. He is the one who I ask for forgiveness for my sins. Rabbi habli hukman wa min as-salihin. This also this is a dua which he made time and time again, asking for the cure from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Going back to this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu, this hadith actually sometimes causes a bit of issue with our youngsters, and especially our elder generation, who are quite stubborn when it comes to seeking help. Men generally don't like to seek help for their medical problems. We are known to be the worst in that case. We don't like to, we feel shy, and we feel that, that arrogance, or we feel that we are too high for this. We don't even go to the doctors when we fall ill. And this is why we should really, when we have an issue like mental health issue, we need to really assess it ourselves and see how much is it affecting our lives. And sometimes, brothers and sisters, Islam, it affects a person to such a stage that all he's doing, he's in his bed 24/7. And this carries on for weeks, and like I mentioned last week, weeks and months and years. And unless somebody actually has to grab him by his hand and pull him to the doctor or GP or the hospital or to a Raqi, he's not going to move himself unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the tawfiq. So the 70,000 who are given this glad tidings is brothers, those and sisters who have the Iman in their hearts, who have the courage, who have this really strength that can go through a thick and thin. We see the elders who have passed away, whenever they used to feel ill or used to have a cold or a fever, it never used to stop them from praying, coming to the masjid, going to work. Even if it was snowing, they wouldn't really stay at home. And this was the mentality which they had. And these were really the people who you think and you hope that you should try to imitate in your lives. Like our fathers, our grandfathers, those who were here in the 50s and 60s, and I mentioned this on purpose last week, that we came here for a purpose to this country, and that was to firstly earn a living for ourselves, our family, but then the niyyah had to change, and that the niyyah was that we call others to the Islam. But how could we call others to Islam if we ourselves are not mentally fit, mentally strong? Because we're going to face a lot of opposition, a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse by the outside world, just as the Prophet ﷺ went through the same situation in his lifetime. So don't let this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ confuse you even more. And this is something, one of the youngsters came to me a few weeks ago and he mentioned this hadith, and he was really adamant that he didn't want to go for any help. I said to him, no brother, you come, I'm going to take you inshallah, firstly to go to the doctors, to the GP, and then we'll go to a Raqi as well to check you up. The second thing is that the ayah of the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah really tells us a lot about sihr and jadoo and ayn, and it tells us something quite clear, and that this is the handiwork of the shaitan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us against delving into this topic. Those who are dealing with this sihr and jadoo and try to cure through the channels of the shaitan and the iblis, etc., they themselves are also falling into the trap of shaitan and kufr. And this is something we have to be very, very careful. I mean, it's very easy when we are in that situation, when we are in need. If anybody says anything, we will believe him or her. And we say, yeah, fine, we'll do anything what you say. We will pay you as much as you want. And this is something I would really like to warn all of you and advise all of you that stay away from firstly paying anyone, especially if he's asking for money up front. You should really run away from him. And also if he says to you, one thing I have to, because people have been telling me this, some really horrendous stories, people asking for their names, date of birth, father's name. Don't give anything away. Don't give any of your personal information away to anyone. The doctors, they will ask you for this information beforehand when you register with the GP. That's fine. They will be kept, and it'll be kept under privacy laws. It won't be known to anyone. But when you give it to someone on the street or somebody who calls himself a Raqi or somebody who's able to cure your mental health, then this is where it becomes a problem. And following from this, the medicine, we always hear people, quoting the medicine of the Prophet ﷺ, which he himself used to use. And this is a sunnah, that we must use any sort of medicine which is available to us, and also use the prophetic spiritual guidance, spiritual healing as well. This is something which sometimes we miss. We either focus too much on the medicine side or on the spiritual side. So there must be, most professionals who are involved in this field will tell you there must be a balance of the two. If one is lacking, it will not help. So it has to be a good balance between the two things. The Prophet ﷺ used many medicines in his lifetime, and these were all medicines that came from out of Arabia, and also medicine which were present at his time in Medina Munawwara. And he would use different things for headaches, for fever, for cold, all these things he wished to use, different types of medication. These are well documented in the books of medicine. Ibn Sina has a very well-known book regarding Tibb al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's something you can use, but again, we shouldn't generalize the ruling for everyone, because some people might be different in the needs which they require at each time. And then when we come to the last point which I mentioned of the illness, the last illness of the Prophet ﷺ, which he later on passed away from, it was a severe fever and headache, and he would time and time again, he would ask his wife Aisha radiallahu to pour water on him, cold water, so in order to bring the temperature down. So even at that instance, we see the Prophet ﷺ hasn't given up on what's available for him, to cure him, to make him more comfortable, enable him to come to the masjid. And this should be our attitude towards the end time. We should always be asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for shifa. And when we see that the time is up, and we realize that the Malak al-Maut is coming, this is where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he narrates that when he spoke to his daughter Fatima, that your father, he will not suffer anymore from this day on. So the one who is about to pass away, they have some signs which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them prior to their death. Following on from this, you may ask, is there a simple solution to this illness? Is there a way out for the community here in Rochdale, in the UK? And why is it, we mentioned a few things last week, why is it increasing? Is it the lifestyle? Is it the diet which we eat? Is it the food which we eat? Is it just the general, how much stress children have, how much stress the parents have, how much stress the elders have? Is it just the general way, the pace of life is so much that we cannot cope with our stresses? And we see from the life of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions that followed them, that they would always give themselves time as well. The problem is nowadays, brothers and sisters, we don't give ourselves any time to reflect, to reevaluate our situation. Our bodies need rest, our minds need rest. We need to be looking after ourselves. And sometimes we get overwhelmed, with what we are doing, with our work, with our study. Even we see children who are stressed, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, they're panicking because they've got exams. And is this really the stress we want them to go through? They're still young, they're 5, 6, 7, and already preparing them for that exam day, that I'm going to have my exam tomorrow. I don't know what to do. I'm panicking. So really, all of it goes down to how we live our lives. Wherever we are, whether we are in the UK, whether we are in Pakistan, whether we are in Saudi, wherever we are, we need to have some time for our family, for ourselves, a break from the normal routine. And the best, really, what we see and what we hear from the Quran is the best of medicine for the qalb. And I mentioned this last week, that the qalb and the ruh and the connection between the mind, they're all interconnected. One takes the lead. Obviously, there are 3 types of nafs. There's the dominant nafs. There's the one which is always guides you towards good, and there's the peaceful nafs, nafs al-mutma'inna. This is the nafs al-mutma'inna, is the one we are trying to achieve through this life. The nafs al-mutma'inna will come definitely if you try to achieve it through the Quran. Now, whether we just recite it by just pure recitation, or even better, going one step further, is reciting it with proper recitation and also understanding the meaning. And having that firm belief that the Quran is a shifa for our sudur, is a shifa for our breast, our qalb, our mind. SubhanAllah, you see videos where the Quran is being recited over water, Zamzam water for instance. The Quran is being recited on a non-Muslim. It's affecting him as well. So what do you think the effect's going to be if you recite it on a Muslim? Even if he's a weak Muslim, he's somebody who doesn't practice 5 prayers a day, we're all weak. Imagine the effect it will have on him. But again, it all goes back to the intention and how much belief do we have in the Quran. You know, a lot of the time we recite the Quran, we might, read the translation, we might read the tafsir, but do we have that belief in the Quran that yes, it is a shifa, lima fi sudur, whatever is in our hearts. Once you overcome this hurdle, then the next step is to actually put it into practice. The best way, if you can recite it yourself, alhamdulillah, is good, but not all of us are able to recite the Quran in its due rights. So what we should do, we should ask someone else to recite it upon us, and then see how you react to this recitation. And again, there is nothing in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which specifies, apart from the mu'awwidhat, alhamdu, to be recited. Now, alhamdu was recited on somebody who had been bitten by a scorpion, and the Sahaba, he recited this ruqya on him, and he got cured. I actually charged him for this as well. And when he came back to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, how do you know this is a shifa for this? He said, I just knew Alhamdulillah is the Kitab, is the best surah, it's the beginning of the Quran, and I just recited on him, and Alhamdulillah he became cured with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he actually charged him a flock of sheep or some ram or something. And the Prophet he said, okay, that's fine. You charged him and you should distribute it amongst your friends who were with you at that. Because they were traveling and they were not given any welcome into that town. So when they needed them, they asked them, because they thought they are holy people, they look nice, they have good characters. Let's go and see if there's a holy person amongst them. So the first thing is definitely, without a doubt, for Muslims, it should be the Quran al-Kareem. And further from carrying on from that, is that there are specific passages which the Salaf al-Salih, the companions, used to read. We know at night time we encourage our children to read Surah Qaf, Surah Waqiyat, Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk. But the two surahs which we should be reading all the time is the Mu'awwidhat. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bin nas, and also Qul Allahu ahad, add that to it. And there's nothing bigger than these three surahs put together, along with the Alhamdulillah. Make it a routine for yourself that you always, when you come, when you're about to go to sleep, or when you get, and there are books written on du'as, Hisnul Muslim, there are different other adiyas which you can recite day and night, evening, morning, all times of the day you can recite them for yourself, and also on your family. One thing I would like to add here is that reading salah in the house has its own barakah as well. Reading the sunnah, the nawafil, has its own really blessing. It's become norm now that we read our farad, our sunnah, our witr, our nafal, our extra nafal, our tahajjud in the masjid. This is really a big issue. This is a big problem, because your children are home. They are seeing you do everything apart from praying. You go to the house, you're angry, you're kicking off with them, you're trying to sort them out, but they're not seeing you in a calm mode. So if they're not seeing you praying the salat, then they're not going to learn from you. So really you should try to delay your sunnah, your nafal, your witr when you get home. Because mashallah, the days are so short now, the nights are long. You have up to midnight at least to pray the witr. If you go on the midnight ruling, you can pray before 12 o'clock. If you want to go later, the last third of the night, which is the best time to pray your qiyam al-layl, etc. So I find when the brothers are called for ruqya, you ask them, what is your ma'mur, what is your daily routine? They tell you, okay, the kids wake up, they have breakfast, then watch a bit of TV, then go to school, come back, they might watch TV again, they might go to the mosque to do madrasa, maktab, they might do their homework, and that's it, they go back to sleep. This is the same thing, 5 days a week. Weekend, what you do, we take them out for a day out, which is good. You should take them out, not leave them inside the house. But there is no spirituality, there is no ruhaniyah. There is nothing to... and again, ruhaniyah doesn't mean that you grab the child by the ear and say to him, come sit next to me, I'm going to read Surah Waqiyah to you, I'm going to read Surah Al-Mulk to you. No, rather you encourage them, so you lead by example, and you see your children follow you. The Prophet ﷺ never used to force any child to read salah behind him. Rather, the children were so fond of him that whenever he was leading, Hassan and Hussein would come, jump on his shoulder, and he would remain in ruku and sujood until they actually came off his shoulder. So this was really leading by example. What we are doing, unfortunately, myself the same, that we are trying to force them to do something which they probably don't enjoy, they don't like, they're not ready for it, maybe they're too young, and we think this is good for them. This is actually not good for them. Rather, let them come and see what you are doing, and let yourself lead by example. There's no one better than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to do this, and how he taught us to be good with the children. Give them love, give them mahabba. Yes, they need a bit of telling off sometimes, but it shouldn't be our daily routine that every time we come home, we are telling our children off, we're telling our wives off that, why haven't done this, why haven't. And this really where the shaitan, he comes in. And the ayah, I'll finish off on this point, that the ayah which I recited, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينَ, what does the shaitan do in this ayah? What's the biggest thing that he's happy about? Anyone remember this ayah apart from the Raqis? Anyone, and the Hafiz? Anyone remember? What's the end bit of this ayah? Have a guess. What were these shayateen, these jinn, what were they so proud about that they mentioned it in the end of the ayah? Have a guess.
I think it's a separation
of
family.
Yes, particularly the husband and wife.
Yeah, community.
Yeah, so separation of the society, of the community, and making them. So what we see now in the house, the child is on his iPad, the mother's maybe in the kitchen, the father's in the living room, the other child is in his bedroom. So everyone is separate. We don't eat together. When it's time to eat, maybe the father's coming home late, maybe the mother's cooked food at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Farq bayn al-mar'i wa zawji. So this was really the biggest thing that the shaitan at that time. And there's a funny story behind this ayah, that the Jews were very proud when they found these hidden treasures, the hidden kutubs of sihr, which was written in the time of Dawud alayhi salam. He actually he got rid of, he put them underneath his throne. Sulaiman son of Dawud, he put them underneath his throne, and he made sure that nobody gets access to them. What has happened after the time of Sulaiman salam, that they had actually found this treasure, and there is still a community who relies on these treasures. Allah knows who they are, where they are, and this is where our community has also been sucked into as well. This big game of sihr and bringing people into their possession, using them to extort money from them, and this is something which we see more and more as time goes along. So really the lesson from the ayah of this in particular is that we need to keep away from anything which is black magic, sihr, ayn, anything which doesn't conform to the Quran or the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to keep away from it. And I'll give you a couple of bullet points of what should be the solutions of this epidemic. Is that, don't forget, this actually, the problem starts from a young age, and it could be genetic, it came later on, but whatever the instance is, we need to make sure it is looked at straight away. We delay it sometimes, and then we call the GP or the Raqi when it's too late, when there is no, it's very difficult to reverse the effect of the mental health issue. It will take time. What we have in the Islamic society, the Muslim society, more and more youngsters are becoming OCD. They're having suicide thoughts. And again, this goes back to the parents and the maktab teachers, those who are teaching them, those who are the chaplains, those who are looking after the society. We need to address this problem as soon as we can. I mentioned honey was one of the shifa, one of the cures of the Prophet ﷺ, with hot water. Anything which is nutritional and herbal will always be good for the body. And what we eat, what goes in, will come out as well. So we need to make sure that what comes in is good, healthy, and is good for us, for both our minds and also for our spirits and for our physical being as well. The last point, because I have my guest here, we're going to ask him to say a few words, and just to give you an idea of how really the situation is, because he has first-hand. I promised the sisters that we will have a small demonstration, so I cannot go against my promise. Alhamdulillah, we'll have just a small recitation, and I will ask the sisters really to pay attention. But before we go on to that, in the last few minutes, so the meditation and the cure from the Quran and the Sunnah, I mentioned some of them, but one of them is that we should always be in an environment which is safe for all of us, which is spiritual, and also we should make sure that the air is fresh, what we drink is fresh. All these will come into being. The intention and prayer, I mentioned that in the beginning, because that's really the first thing we need to always go back to the intention and the purpose of our life. What is our purpose of our life? Sleeping, eating, being smiley at all time, being happy. Have this happy-go approach. Don't ever, even if you are going through the worst in your life. This was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, he went through so many difficulties in his life, the trials and tribulation. None of us can bear that. You know, he went through the most any prophet had gone through, alayhi salatu wasalam. But yet, he had his laugh, he had his joking. You know, he would tease his companions. Yeah, and this was really the way he would come as a leader, as somebody who would inspire his congregation. So be smiley, make sure you are physical, you move around, you don't just remain lazy, and put your energy into something which is positive. Any positive activity, sports which you enjoy, walking, running, anything which fits you, which suits you, you should go with this. And again, the last thing is reference to what can we do for other people. So this is what I was discussing last week. Is for ourselves. These are the main points. But for other people, the main thing is that we need to help them whatever we can. You know, put your arm around their shoulder. Make sure we have brothers, you know, who have lost their family members. We go to their house. We just sit there. We need to really give them condolences. Make dua for them. You know, say to them, brother, don't worry. He's in a better place now. Allah will forgive him. He's a good person. Always repeat these things, and you'll make him feel much happier by saying these things. So with other people, have that connection with them, and have this natural inclination towards assisting other people. You know, we see, unfortunately, the Muslims have lost this character, and the non-Muslims are taking this from us. They are, you know, helping others. You know, you say by helping others, you help yourself. This is what they say. This is their motto. Rather, this was something which the Prophet ﷺ says that love for your brother what you love for yourself. So if you love prosperity and happiness for yourself, you should also love it for your brother or your sister. And also, don't say anything negative to them. If they're going through this situation, always give them the heads up that you are doing your best. You know, you're working well. You're doing whatever you can. And the final thing you say to them, make sure that, you know, they really believe, not just saying it with your tongue. Make sure they believe that you care for them, that you are really, you know, worried about their situation. Speak to them on a daily basis, phone them up, text them. There was a case in London a few years ago of a brother from the Asian background, and he tells a story that he was going through depression. He lost his father left the house. He beat his mother up. And then he left the house. He was only young, 15, 16 years old, and he went through a spout of depression. He came to a point that he almost jumped off the bridge. He almost jumped off a bridge. What stopped him? He said that he had a group of friends who rang him that day and phoned him and took him out for a meal and made him feel really good, made him feel very happy. He goes, if it wasn't for those brothers and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would have jumped off the bridge, because he was going through extreme depression in his life. So that's going back to the communal help, what your friends could do for you. It's really something unbelievable. So he was saying a first-hand story, and now he's actually a mental health worker in London, helping other brothers and sisters who are going through the same situation. And he's saying this is really the main focus of his talk. He said that, you know, you can try medicine, you can try ruqya, but when it comes to that brotherly bond, the sisterly bond, there is nothing better. They actually took me by my hand, by force, and took me out for a meal. We had a good time, alhamdulillah, and they spoke to me. And after that, I changed my ways. I did repentance. I said, oh Allah, forgive me for even the thought of suicide. You know, even the thought of suicide is one of the biggest sins from shaitan. And suicide, you know, the adab of that, it remains in the qabr. And obviously when you are resurrected on the Day of Judgment, you will be resurrected in the same way which you died. Which, you know, there's a hadith, really scary hadith of this guy, this Sahaba, Prophet ﷺ, he had said that this person will go to Jahannam. He was fighting in one of the battles. He got injured, and the pain of the injury was so much so that he stabbed himself and he took his own life. So the Sahaba who were around, he said, yeah, the Prophet said the truth, because this person was not patient. He didn't do sabr. he took things into his own hands. And this is something we should always be careful about, is that we should always turn back and should look that, there is always someone who's, worse off, who's probably not as in the same situation as we are. Always you'll find people in a position lower than yourself with regards to their health, their mental being, etc. I will finish off on this point. There are other things which I wanted to mention, going to the theory and the practice. Inshallah, we will have a small demonstration of just some of the things which we go through in a Ruqya Sharia al-Islam. But there are also defensive mechanisms which we can use. Some of them which I mentioned last week. Does anyone remember what I mentioned last week? I'm just looking at what are the defensive mechanisms? How could you protect yourself from, say, ayn? So you might be a handsome boy or a girl, somebody looks at you and he says or she says, oh, what a beautiful girl, what a beautiful boy, and that's it, you're knocked out. There are defensive mechanisms, and that is really, I mentioned them last week. First is the mu'awadat, and making sure that you control your glances. When you're looking at someone in such a way that it could really affect him in a bad way. And also, don't ever be suspicious, of people. Always think that you are able to control the emotions that you have inside yourself. Naturally, when you hear of someone passing away, you're going to be upset. Naturally, if something hurts you in your heart, you're going to react. But don't let that emotion take over your thinking mechanism, which is your brain. And when your brain is taken over by the emotions, you see that's why people are left in a state which they are unable to come out of. La tahzan is the famous ayah in the Quran. La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. Don't despair, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you at all times. And have that 4, 5, 10 minutes every night to have that one-to-one conversation with your Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ask him for whatever you need, and he will verily respond to you in all your affairs, whether it is your worldly affairs, whether it is your akhir affairs. He will come to your aid and to your help. There were other advices, but inshallah I will stop here. If there's any questions, anything which brothers would like to comment or would ask, then please do so. Otherwise, inshallah, we'll ask our brother Saeed to say a few words. He's